Hello, everybody. Hello to the Migraine Mentees. This is Dr. Eric Reese, the Migraine Mentor, flying solo today. Dr. Maisaka will not be with me. I'm in a hotel room in Switzerland. I'm attending the UEFA conference. And so I'm going to just be doing this by myself today. But lo and behold, this topic is something that is very interesting and relevant to not only where I am, but most of you out there who are potentially looking at your New Year's resolutions and saying, what just happened? So we're going to talk about exercise. We're going to talk about exercise for those who struggle with migraine specifically, because I think that there needs to be a caveat listed with those who are exercising and are dealing with migraine attacks. Not every form of exercise is going to be your friend. And so I wanted to give a brief overview of this because this is something Dr. Maisaka and I have talked a lot about, just not with the Migraine Mentors community. And so I think it's something that's relevant because it's so important for brain health. Exercise will always be movement of the brain, and it's the language of the brain for so many aspects as well too. It stimulates more blood flow, it upregulates neurological function, it can dampen inflammation, it can have beneficial mental health effects, it can improve your sleep. I mean, the list genuinely goes on and on, because physical movement and exercise is one of the best ways to stimulate and stabilize the brain. And as a migrainer, that you're already dealing with unstable or unstable neurons that are kind of allowing you or pushing you into that path of being triggered by symptoms in your attacks. And so this is something that's really relevant for those of you who are in the migraine community. And even if you're not, right, this is a great kind of entry point into getting into exercise. And so the first and foremost kind of thing I want to point out is that if you're currently not exercising, it's probably going to be a bad idea for you just to go crank out a high intensity workout, right? If you go run 2 or 3 miles, or you go huck a ton of weights, or even do like a hot yoga or a bar class, it's probably not going to turn out very well for you for a couple of reasons. One, if you're not conditioned, you're just going to just max out and fatigue yourself. But two, sometimes those situations can trigger a pretty potent stress response. And as you know, with being a migrainer, stress is not always your friend. And so what you really have to do is you have to slowly ease yourself into workouts. And I mean like super slow. Like if you're not working out right now, the best thing for you to get started with working out might be like a 5 or 10 minute walk around the block or on a treadmill. And I know that might sound basic and you're like, oh, maybe I can do it. Or maybe you're like, hey, I don't even know if I can do that. That's okay. With the patients that come into our clinic, we have to meet them where they're at. And that's one of the most fundamental aspects about practice that I've realized is like, if my treatment plan's here, but the patient is here, or vice versa, there's always going to be a disconnect. And so you have to meet yourself where you're at, and you have to be realistic with your expectations and setting that. So first and foremost, if you are getting into exercise, take it slow, prioritize sleep and recovery and rest and all of the things we've talked about, right? So you need all of those things to make this a winning combination. But then over time, like let's say you're like, oh, these walks are easy, or the treadmill's been fine, or the biking's been good. But then now you can kind of branch off and get into some different exercises. But there is one type of exercise that I would advise you to stay away from, and that is high intensity interval training. Okay. Now, I'm a big fan of HIIT training for the general population and for 90% of people out there. But as somebody who deals with migraines, you have to be very careful with this sudden surge of changes in blood pressure, changes in heart rates, changes in respiration, and then more importantly as well too, just like what that can do, right? If you're doing a high intensity interval training and you're jumping up and down or you're biking really fast, sometimes that stress can just be a lot. And if there are areas in your brain that are considered to be unstable because you're still dealing with active migraine issues, then we need to stabilize those areas, right? That's why you get good sleep, you eat well, you stay hydrated, you have your electrolytes. But pushing your body too fast, too quickly might be a recipe for success. So with that caveat being said, what I would tell you is that most of the other exercises are probably going to be really good for you. I'm a big fan of people getting enough cardiovascular exercise. So whether that's biking, swimming, jogging, walking, like whatever kind of form that you can engage in is going to be the best form for you. There's other things like I love lifting weights. I think weights are so beneficial and they're so therapeutic. What we're finding out is that people are really under muscled as they get into the later years of their life. You start losing muscle around like 30, 35, 40, depending on the research study you would look at. And hormones change, right? So you have to be really careful and considerate about those aspects. And so what I would tell you is weightlifting can be a phenomenal way for you to take stress off your neck and like build up your lower back. or build up your shoulders and make sure your legs are strong. I mean, all of these things can have benefits for you posturally, neurologically, and just with like resetting some of the inputs for your neck and your body. I would say one of the easiest therapies or exercises you could get yourself into is something like a restorative yoga class, doing vinyasa based yoga, or even doing like some like mindfulness meditative based courses or meditative based like even like training sessions, because those things can be very relaxing. They're still not very easy on the body because you're working on balance and stability and stabilizing different muscle groups, but they're going to give you a therapeutic benefit of also having that de-stress and that relaxation aspect. And as we've talked about in the past with optimizing your vagal tone, making sure you're not too stressed out, how to make sure hormones and inflammation are still, within the normal ranges and working for you. All of those therapies are going to be a great idea for you. Now, with that said, you got to do what you want to do, right? So if I tell you to go do a yoga class and you hate yoga, there's a high chance you're probably not going to do it. But if you love lifting weights, then there's probably a great way for us to get you started with some basic weights and then tier things up moving forward, right? So you shouldn't start off doing a bench press with like 70 or 80 pounds. You shouldn't start off doing a squat rack at 45 pounds on each side. You should start and meet yourself where you're at. And I think that that's the most important caveat and kind of summary that I want to give you is that uh, all forms of exercise are going to be therapeutic for you. I would generally personally stay away from high intensity interval training just because of what I had just said. If you're somebody who's already physically active and you're doing those and they're working for you, phenomenal, good on you, that's great. But for those of you out there who aren't exercising or who are just getting started with it, I would maybe suggest staying away from that for the time being until your brain and body are ready for it. Then I say go all out if you want to. So I hope that was helpful. I know that there's so much conversation and, you look at the literature and sometimes exercise can actually trigger a migraine or a really bad headache or whatever you're dealing with. And I want you to know that it doesn't always have to be that way. It's kind of like fasting. When I started out fasting, I would get really lightheaded. I get really hangry. I would not do very well. And now I can fast for 18, 20, 24 hours multiple times a week. And I feel great. And I can even get workouts in with that. Your brain and body are flexible and they will grow and change and adapt based off of the things that you give it, right? Those stressors can be a good thing because your brain and body need that to be stressed, overcome it, and now the next time they encounter it, you're so much better off to handle it. But you got to be careful. And exercise is the same way. And so with that being said, I just empower you to move every single day. If you're not currently moving, I empower you to get started. If you are moving, good on you. Let's keep you moving. Let's stay active. Make sure you're always dosing with electrolytes and getting good food and recovering with good sleep. And then outside of that, just continue to do the things that we've talked about, right? So making sure you're happy, you're not very stressed, you're focusing on yourself, you're making sure you get good foods, optimizing your sleep metrics, all the things that we've continuously hammered home with you. And it's all about forming those healthy habits. So once again, I'm Dr. Reese, the migraine mentor, not here with my co-pilot, Dr. Miyasaka, but next time we will be. And so hopefully you learned a little bit of something about exercise and how to help your migraine symptoms. For those who are subscribers to our newsletter, thank you for your support and guidance and feedback. For those of you who aren't subscribers to our newsletter, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and subscribe in the link below, and we hope to see you in the next edition of the Migraine Mentors newsletter.